The cool thing is, you don't need to add any new CSS classes to be able to use transition group. It works just like transition, so you can use the same CSS classes, your name entry, your name entry active, and so on. The same is true for JavaScript hooks. That's exactly the same. The only difference is the name of the component you're using here, but that is only relevant for Vue.js. You use it just like transition, wrapping the code you want to have in your transition group. By the way, that should not include the unordered list since we don't want to animate that. So let me remove this. So just like this. And now this, of course, is more than one element because list item will be replicated. So therefore, we need such a transition group. And now again, usage is the same as for transition, but behind the scenes, it now also works for multiple items. So here, let's say we want to use our slide animation. So name is slide. We already set up all the classes we need here. And with that being set up, let's see if it now works out of the box. Nope, the whole list is gone. What happened here? It's kind of similar to the problem we had before with transitioning between two elements which used the same HTML tag like div here. We had to key them to let Vue.js know which element is which. And for transition group, we always have to key the elements here, even if they were using a separate tag name. So here we need to add a key because otherwise Vue.js is not able to identify the individual items in the list. However, it needs to be able to identify them because when it animates them, it also needs to move the existing elements. And for that, it needs to be sure that it moves the right element. And for that, it needs a key because it can't identify them otherwise. Each element needs a unique ID. So you can choose anything which is unique. Here, I will bind key with a colon because it's a dynamic binding I want to set up here to my number. Because each number is only part of this array once, it's a perfectly valid unique key. Now with this in place, if we reload this, we see that the list is back. And if I add it, we see we now smoothly animates in. Though the one ugly thing is, also the case for removing it, that everything jumps. So it snaps the list together after the element is removed. And if I add one, it instantly jumps down to make room for the new element. It would be nice if that moving of elements would also be animated so that we really have a smooth animation going on here in our list. Turns out we can animate it. That's a big difference between transition group and transition. Yes, we can use it the same way, but it also has an extra here. It gives us access to a new CSS class. Besides slide enter active, and so on, because we're using the slide animation here, the same would be true for fade, of course, if we use that. Besides these classes, we also got slide move. And this class is attached to any element which needs to change its place. For example, because a new element was added, another element therefore needs to change the place because it needs to move down, or when deleting an element, it needs to move up. And for this movement process, this slide move class here is attached to allow us to animate this as well. How shall we animate this then? Well, we could simply say transition and then transition the change of the transform property over 1 second. Transform is this property we use here in the animation, for example, which Vue.js will use behind the scenes for moving elements. So this is not related to our keyframes here. Vue.js will always move elements behind the scenes by using transform, translate y or x, whatever is appropriate, to make them move their position. Now, since Vue.js will do that behind the scenes to change the position of an element, we can transition this property, this transform property, to take advantage of this being used by Vue.js to animate it. So what I'm telling CSS here is whenever the transform property is somehow changed, and it is changed when Vue.js uses translate x or translate y, whenever that happens, animate it over 1 second. And this is why we will see such animation. However, if I use it like this, what you will notice is that if I reload this and add an item, it moves down perfectly. Looks great. Looks exactly how we want it to behave. But if I remove an item, we still have this snapping going on. Now why is that? Why is it working for adding items but not for removing items? The answer is because when we remove an item, the old items which are sitting below the new items still have their position in the document flow. And that position will only change if the old item is removed. And the fact that we want to animate it doesn't change this because it can't be animated with translate Y if we would hurt the document flow with that kind of. So we have to go to slide leave active, which is the class attached to the element which is removed during the removal process. And here we have to switch its position to absolute. This makes sure that other elements may move above this element whilst this element is still being animated. And therefore, if I now reload this, we can see I can still add items, but if we remove one, this now looks fine and it moves the other items correctly, just like that. So this looks much better now with the whole list being animated now.